Long ago, in the golden plains of the desert, when the world was still young, the zebra was not the striped creature we know today. Back then, his coat was as white as the clouds, smooth and unmarked. His fur gleamed under the sun, making him stand out like a bright pearl among the dusty savanna. Zebra was proud of his beauty. Every morning, he would go to the river to admire his reflection. He loved how pure and spotless his fur looked, untouched by any blemish. Other animals often complimented him on his dazzling coat, and he carried himself with great pride, believing that he was the most magnificent creature in the land. But the land was about to face its greatest challenge. One year the rains did not come. The rivers began to dry, the lakes shrank, and the great waterfalls slowed to a mere trickle. The once lush and green savanna turned brown and brittle under the burning sun. Trees lost their leaves, and the grass withered, leaving the ground cracked and dry. The animals of the land suffered greatly. The mighty elephants, who once bathed in large pools, now walked for miles searching for a single sip of water. The lions, once strong and proud, lay under the shade, their tongues dry and their bodies weak. Even the small birds, who had once chirped joyfully in the treetops, now flew silently across the sky, searching desperately for any sign of water. Zebra, too, felt the pain of the drought. His beautiful white coat, once sleek and shiny, was now covered in dust. His throat burned with thirst, and his legs grew tired from wandering. He could no longer admire himself in the river's reflection, because the river was gone. The search for water became a struggle for survival. Every animal in the savanna searched for the last remaining drops, but they were few and far between. The pools that once sparkled under the sun had turned into patches of cracked mud. The animals grew desperate, for they knew that without water, they would not last much longer. One day, after walking for hours under the scorching sun, Zebra caught a faint scent in the air. It was familiar, fresh, and filled him with hope, water. With renewed energy, he lifted his head and sniffed again. Yes, it was water. Somewhere nearby, hidden from sight, a small watering hole still remained. His heart pounded with excitement, and without a moment to lose, he galloped toward the source of the scent. But Zebra was not the only one who had discovered the water. As he reached the hidden watering hole, he saw a large figure sitting near its edge. It was Baboon, the trickster of the savanna. His brown fur was covered in dust, and his long tail swayed lazily behind him. His sharp eyes flickered with mischief as he spotted Zebra approaching. Zebra's relief quickly turned to concern. He knew Baboon's reputation. He was cunning, selfish, and always looking for a way to outsmart others. Still, Zebra was desperate. He stepped forward, his hooves kicking up dust, and spoke. "Baboon," he said, keeping his voice calm, "please let me drink. The land is dry, and I have traveled far. This water belongs to all of us." Baboon smirked, showing his sharp teeth. He dipped his hand into the water and let it drip through his fingers as he spoke. "This watering hole belongs to me," he said. "I found it first. If you want to drink, you must earn it." Zebra frowned. "Water is for everyone, Baboon. The savanna is suffering. You cannot keep it for yourself." Baboon's grin widened. "Then fight me for it," he challenged. "If you are strong enough to defeat me, you may drink." Zebra was taken aback. He had never fought anyone before. He was a fast runner, swift and graceful, but he had never used his hooves in battle. Still, his thirst was unbearable, and he could not allow Baboon to keep the water to himself while the other animals suffered. He squared his shoulders and met Baboon's gaze. "Very well," he said. "If a fight is what you want, then I will not back down." Baboon laughed, already preparing himself. He climbed onto a nearby rock, looking down at Zebra with amusement. "Let us see if you are as strong as you are beautiful," he teased. The animals of the savannah, sensing the coming fight, began to gather in the distance. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dry land. The wind carried the whispers of the watching creatures as they held their breath in anticipation. The fight for the last water had begun. Baboon crouched on the rock, his sharp eyes glinting with mischief as he watched Zebra prepare for battle. The wind stirred the dust between them, carrying the hushed whispers of the gathered animals. Every creature, from the smallest meerkat to the towering giraffe, had come to witness the showdown. It was not just a fight for water, it was a fight for fairness, for survival, for the right of every animal to drink. Zebra's heart pounded in his chest. He had never fought before, never had to use his speed and strength in battle. He had always relied on his beauty, his elegance, and his swift legs to avoid danger. But today he had no choice. His thirst burned his throat, and the sight of the glistening water only made it worse. He could not let Baboon keep it for himself. Baboon leaped down from the rock with a thud, landing gracefully on the dry earth. He grinned, baring his sharp teeth. "Are you ready, pretty one?" he sneered. Zebra stomped his hooves, sending a small cloud of dust into the air. "I am ready," he said firmly. With a sudden burst of speed, Baboon charged. He was small but quick, his powerful arms reaching out, his claws aiming straight for Zebra's face. But Zebra was fast too. Faster than Baboon had expected. He sidestepped just in time, dodging the attack and kicking up more dust. The crowd gasped. Baboon skidded to a stop, growling in frustration. "You're quick," he admitted, dusting himself off. "But let's see how long you can keep running." Zebra snorted, lowering his head. He knew he could not just dodge forever. If he wanted to win, he had to fight back. Baboon lunged again, swiping at Zebra's sleek white coat. This time, Zebra reared up on his hind legs, his front hooves kicking forward. One of them struck Baboon's shoulder, sending the trickster stumbling back with a yelp. The animals cheered. It was the first time anyone had stood up to Baboon. Baboon growled, rubbing his shoulder. His playful smirk disappeared, replaced by anger. He grabbed a handful of dry dirt and, with a swift motion, flung it into Zebra's face. Zebra cried out, blinking rapidly as the dust stung his eyes. Baboon took advantage of the moment, leaping forward and scratching Zebra's side with his sharp claws. Pain seared through Zebra's body. He stumbled back, his beautiful white coat now marked with thin red lines. The scratches burned, but his spirit burned even hotter. He shook his head, clearing his vision, and glared at Baboon. The fight was far from over. With a sudden surge of determination, Zebra charged. His powerful legs thundered across the ground, sending vibrations through the earth. Baboon tried to leap away, but this time, Zebra was faster. He turned sharply and kicked out with his hind legs. Crack! His hooves struck Baboon right in the chest, sending him flying backward. Baboon crashed against the rock he had once perched on, his breath knocked out of him. The impact sent small embers from his nearby fire flying into the air. One of the glowing embers landed on Zebra's coat. A sharp sizzle filled the air as the ember burned into his white fur. Zebra jerked, feeling the sting. He shook his body, but more embers scattered, leaving blackened marks along his sides. The smell of singed hair filled the air. The animals gasped in shock. Zebra looked down at himself, his breathing heavy. His once pure white coat was now streaked with black marks, lines of soot and ash that ran across his sides and down his legs. His beauty, his perfection was gone. But he had won. Baboon groaned from where he lay, too weak to rise. He clutched his chest, his breath ragged. He had never expected Zebra to fight with such strength, such courage. defeated and humiliated. He crawled away, disappearing into the dry grass. Zebra turned back to the water. His body ached, his new black markings still warm from the embers, but he had no time to think about them. He stepped forward and at last lowered his head to drink. The cool water rushed down his throat, reviving him, filling him with relief. He closed his eyes, savoring the moment. One by one, the other animals approached. First timidly, then with growing confidence. They, too, lowered their heads and drank freely, their thirst finally quenched. The drought had not ended. The sun was still merciless, the land still dry. But now they had hope. They had learned that water was not something to be hoarded by one. It belonged to everyone. As for Zebra, he would never be the same. His white coat was forever marked by the battle, striped with black streaks, a reminder of his courage, his fight, and his victory. And from that day forward, every zebra was born with those same black stripes, carrying the story of their ancestor who had stood against selfishness and fought for what was right. But Zebra's journey was not yet over. The battle with Baboon was only the beginning. For deep in the heart of the savannah, a new challenge awaited. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of orange and deep purple, but the savannah remained restless. The animals murmured among themselves, still in awe of what they had witnessed. Zebra, once known for his pure white coat, now stood before them, forever changed. The black stripes on his body were reminders of the battle he had fought, not just for himself, but for all the creatures of the land. That night, Zebra lay by the watering hole, his body aching from the fight, but his heart filled with pride. He had won, but at a cost. His once pristine coat was no more. The embers had burned into his fur, leaving dark streaks that would never fade. As he stared into the water, he saw his new reflection. His beauty had changed, yet there was something powerful in his new form. A warrior's mark, a reminder that he had stood against selfishness and fought for fairness. But deep in the shadows, Baboon was watching. Humiliated and furious, Baboon crouched behind a rock, his eyes burning with anger. He had always thought himself the cleverest of the animals, the trickster who could outwit anyone. But now, he had been defeated in front of the entire savannah. And worse, he had lost control of the last source of water. His chest ached from the force of Zebra's powerful kick. His pride was wounded even more than his body. He could not let this insult go unanswered. Baboon clenched his fists, his tail twitching in frustration. He would have his revenge. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight stretched across the plains, the animals gathered once more at the watering hole. For the first time in weeks, they drank in peace, no longer fearing that the water would be kept from them. Zebra stood tall, his striped coat shimmering under the morning light. He no longer cared about being the most beautiful. His stripes were a part of him now, a part of his story. But just as he was about to drink, a loud howl of pain echoed across the savannah. The animals turned in alarm. The sound had come from the other side of the watering hole, where the ground sloped into a bed of sharp rocks. Zebra's ears perked up. He recognized that voice. It was Baboon. Curious, Zebra trotted toward the source of the noise, the other animals following behind. As they reached the rocky edge, they found Baboon lying on the ground, clutching his leg. His face was twisted in pain, and his long tail twitched weakly. "Help me," Baboon groaned, his voice weak and pitiful. "I fell. My leg, it's broken." A few of the animals gasped in sympathy, whispering among themselves. Though Baboon had been cruel, he was still one of them. Zebra frowned, studying him closely. Something didn't feel right. Baboon had always been a trickster. Was this just another one of his deceptions? Still, he could not ignore the suffering of another creature. Carefully, Zebra stepped forward. You need water, he said, lowering his head. Lean on me, and I will help you drink. Baboon nodded weakly, struggling to stand. He reached out and grabbed onto Zebra's back, his fingers digging into the black and white fur. And then, bam! Baboon lunged, his strong arms wrapping around Zebra's neck in a tight grip. Zebra gasped in shock, rearing up on his hind legs as Baboon clung to him like a leech. The pain in Baboon's leg had been a lie. He was as strong as ever. I will not be humiliated again. Baboon snarled, his teeth bared. You stole my water, you ruined my pride, and now I will make sure you suffer for it. Zebra kicked and thrashed, trying to shake Baboon off, but the trickster was clinging tightly. The other animals cried out in alarm, watching the struggle unfold. Baboon, holding on for dear life, reached for a sharp rock nearby. He grinned wickedly. If he couldn't defeat Zebra in front of everyone, he would at least leave him with a permanent wound to remember him by. But Zebra was not the same creature he had been yesterday. He had learned to fight. With all his strength, Zebra leapt into the air and twisted his body sharply. The sudden motion sent Baboon flying through the air. Splash! Baboon landed in the watering hole, right in the muddiest, dirtiest part. He flailed wildly, trying to get up, but his fur was now covered in thick, dark mud. The animals burst into laughter. The mighty trickster, the selfish hoarder of water, was now a mud-soaked mess. Baboon staggered out of the water, his once brown fur stained dark with wet dirt. He coughed and sputtered, wiping his face, but the mud stuck to him like glue. Zebra stepped forward, standing tall with his new stripes gleaming in the sunlight. Baboon, he said, his voice steady. You tried to take what was meant for all of us. You fought me unfairly. But now look at yourself. Baboon growled, his face red with embarrassment. He could not bear to see the animals laughing at him. With a final snarl, he turned and scampered away, disappearing into the trees. The animals cheered for Zebra. Not only had he won the battle, but he had taught Baboon a lesson he would never forget. Zebra smiled, stepping back to the water's edge. He looked down once more at his striped reflection, feeling no regret. He had lost his white coat, but he had gained something much greater: honor, strength, and the respect of the entire savannah. And so, from that day on, all zebras were born with black and white stripes, a mark of the courage of their ancestor, the zebra who had once fought for fairness and won. As for Baboon, he never dared to hoard water again. But if you look closely at baboons today, you'll notice something. Their fur still has patches of dark stains, as if the mud from that day never truly washed away. A reminder of the day Zebra taught him a lesson he would never forget.